What's up, Met fans, and welcome back to Talking Mets here. Rob, how is everybody doing on this Saturday early night, on this lovely Saturday in New York? Absolutely, actually. But the Mets are in the third day of their West Coast trip. Already a couple of odd stories that already happened with two of our star players, and we'll also talk about DeGrom and what he has done, starting his actual real rehab when it comes to coming back, hopefully sometime in the middle of July, about the All-Star break. But once again, guys, don't forget to please hit on that like button. Be with you till all the way until 7 o'clock tonight for Let's Talk Live with me and you guys here today. So once again, guys, hit on that like button and put all your questions, all your concerns, whatever you want to talk about in the chat, and you will get a shout out today during the live show. So, Mets were smoking hot right before the West Coast trip. 6 in a row, swept the homestand, hitting like crazy. They had over 50 plus runs in the homestand. Met fans were flying high. The confidence of the team was flying high. A nice flight to the West Coast. Everything was going well. And then we get a story a few hours before game time, or close when the lineup came out for game one of the Dodgers series, that Francisco Lindor is not in the lineup because he got his finger lodged between a sliding door, whatever it is, and jammed his finger and it made it swollen. Can't play. Wonderful. And then everybody started talking on Twitter. Oh, it must be June. This is the Mets. Oh, Lord. They said it wasn't serious, but, it's still the Mets. Of course, we go on the West Coast trip, smoking hot, 6-game winning streak, and we lose one of our best players in the lineup who has been extremely hot going into the West Coast trip. All right, fine. Game one comes. All right, Taijuan Walker, what do you expect from him? 5, maybe 6 innings, a couple of runs. Well, that's exactly what Taijuan Walker gave you. 2 runs on 5 2/3, and you couldn't ask more for Taijuan Walker going against Gosselin, who's one of the better pitchers in the game at this particular moment. Okay, the Mets didn't score. All right, fine. Gosselin was just had the Mets number. I mean, you give up 2 runs to the Dodgers, you have to win that ball game. It's just that simple, and that's exactly what you want from your pitcher going forward. If somebody would have told you before the game, 5 2/3, 2 runs for Taijuan Walker, and that's all the runs that the Dodgers are going to get for the game, you're going to think, oh, the Mets are going to score at least 3 runs. They're going to win this ball game. And their bats were completely flat. It was obvious that the confidence, the hot lineup that we were having throughout the homestand and missing Lindor kind of mess with the mojo, the flow, whatever it was. It just didn't, actually do anything that entire day. And Gosselin had the Mets number the entire game. And it sucked. But you know what? You can live with a 2-0 loss knowing that the bats didn't score, they didn't hit, and you're like, all right, fine. We can deal with that. It happens. Jet lag. It was a flight. They had to take the cross-country flight, got in late, time difference, all that stuff. All right, we can deal with that one game. We already lost the game in the standings, 9.5 games in front of the Braves because the Braves won. All right, we get to game 2. All right, we got our Bulldog Bassett on the mound. Everything's going to be looking good. You trust Bassett. Great. We find out before the game that Tyler McGill is having a rehab start on Sunday, so that just gives him one step closer. A little bit of good news for the Mets. McGill will be pitching in Double-A on Sunday, so if everything goes well, now that's only one start. I mean, how many innings and pitches is he going to throw? Who knows? Maybe 50, 60 pitches. Are they going to give him a second rehab start? Or depending on, I guess, how the West Coast trip is panning out, if the Mets are really struggling on the West Coast trip, maybe they'll even bring McGill just to throw a couple of innings, 50, 60 pitches, And if you line it up with Sunday, he'll be ready for either game 1 or 2 of the Angels series, the last part of the Mets West Coast trip. So McGill gets the rehab start on Sunday in Double-A. Everything goes well. Even if he only has that one rehab start and is going to pitch in the Angels series, he's not going deep. 50, 60 pitches, whatever inning that is, he's out of the game. So that means you're going to have either Holdeman and Nagosic ready to go after him to pitch a couple of innings apiece to get through that game that McGill pitches. All right, fine. Game 2 starts. Chris Bassitt, he's a bulldog. He's going to keep us in the ball game. Well, he didn't do very well at all. And if you notice something about that game, game 2 against the Dodgers, the big problem that I've noticed, not only during last night's game, but games over the last couple of weeks, ever since McCann went down, the shakeoffs that Bassitt has been given to Mazika and Nito. Clearly, Bassitt is not comfortable with either of these two catchers. Again, there's not much we can do about it. McCann is hurt. But Bassitt, with all the pitches he has, just seems like he had a good relationship with James McCann. James McCann seemed like he always knew what pitch to put down, what Bassitt was looking for, and it was going quick. Get the ball, get in the rubber, set, throw. Now Bassitt has been shaken off 100 times, almost on, it looks like on every pitch. There's no fluid motion because he keeps on shaking off, he keeps on stepping off, and throwing over the first, stepping off, and shaking off, and everything like that. And I think it messes with Chris Bassitt. Even though he's a veteran, I think he gets way too upset. Excuse me. He gets way too upset with that situation, and I don't think it necessarily gets to him, but I think it messes with his flow, and I think it hurts him going forward. Sorry, guys, I'm just making sure all right, cool. Just wanted to check the comments really quick. So, when it comes to that game, again, Mets bats are extremely cold. Lindor's back in the lineup. I think there'll be a little bit of a spark. But the Mets really didn't get anything going at all against Anderson. And we already know the Mets have problems hitting left-handed pitchers. We're gonna see 2 in this series. We've already seen 1 in Anderson and Urias in game 4. And then they got the ace of the staff in Buehler tonight. So with game 2, Mets bats were cold again. Yippee. I mean, it just was a problem the entire game. 2 2-run bombs that made it 4-0 going into this after the first 4 innings. All right, 4 runs, not that terrible. The Mets shown ways to come back on the road and at home, but they could not touch Tyler Anderson. That was basically, it looked like a game that we were going to lose. It was just that simple. It just felt like that the entire game. 7th inning, Alonso comes up, hits a solo bomb, a bomb to left field. Great, 4-1 at the moment. Then the Dodgers come right back, score another run, and then in the 8th score another run, and that ends up being 6-1. Bassitt did not pitch well, gave up 2 2-run home runs, couple extra runs there, not by Bassitt but by the relievers, and it just spiraled into the entire game. You looked like there was no chance the Mets were going to win this ball game, especially the terrible swings they were taking against Anderson. It was clear early on that Anderson had the Mets number, and Mets lost 6-1. Wasn't competitive. At least in game 1, you could talk about being somewhat competitive. We were in the entire ball game. At any moment in a 2-0 game, you seem like the Mets, get a bloop and a blast here, or a couple of base runners in a row, knock a couple of hits together, tie this ball game, maybe even go ahead. The Mets didn't do that. So game 1, at least they were in it. At any moment, they could have tied or took the lead. In this ball game, it just never felt. Right after that Bellinger home run, even though it was 2-0, it felt like the Mets were just done in that ball game. I don't know what it is. Maybe you got to give credit to the Dodgers, no doubt about that. Their pitching is outstanding. The Mets didn't do absolutely nothing. So going into today's game, game 3, another 10 o'clock game if you're on the East Coast. It's David Peterson against the ace Walker Buehler. David Peterson, last time out, didn't pitch well. Couldn't even get out of the 5th inning. And that was against the Nationals. Now, of course, you might expect, he pitched bad last game. Well, guess what? He's first facing a tough Dodger lineup, and there's probably no shot in this game. Of course, he'll probably pitch well. It's just good. I think it's going to come down to, just like the first 2 games, the Mets need to start scoring runs. Put a little bit of pressure on this Dodger team. They seemed way too comfortable in game 1 and 2. They just, after coming off a losing streak, after getting swept out by the Pirates, they just felt way too comfortable in these first 2 games. The Mets have to rattle them a little bit. And the one way to rattle them is to get to Walker Buehler. Some way, somehow. I don't care if you got a bunt to get on. I don't care what you got to do to get on base, but rattle the Dodgers, rattle Walker early. That's what you have to do. And it just seemed like Nimmo's struggling ever since he came back from that wrist injury. He's swinging at early in counts. He's striking out all over the place. It's just not typical Nimmo. Lindor, who knows? There's somewhat of a minor fracture in that finger with Lindor. Is that affecting him? Is it not? I don't know. Nobody really had that good of at-bats. In game 1, the Dodgers played good defense. A couple balls could have dropped in, could have changed the game, but did not. Game 2, it just seemed like a wash as soon as Bellinger hit that home run. Seemed like the Mets turned into the old Mets, where as soon as they got down, that was basically it. The Mets got to change that today. We still have the opportunity to split the series. Yes, it's going to be difficult against Buehler and Urias the next 2 ball games, and you don't have your best pitchers going. You had Walker and Bassett. You could see the Mets winning one of those ball games at the very least. Well, guess what? We lost 2. We got Peterson today, and we got Williams tomorrow. And that's not going to be any easier. So the Mets are going to have to score runs. It doesn't matter what the pitchers do. Even though the Dodgers scored 6 runs yesterday, they only had 4 through the first, 5 or 6 innings. The Mets had every opportunity to come back in this ball game, but faltered. The Mets got to get to Buehler today. Again, bunt, whatever you got to do to get on base. Get on base. Put pressure on the Dodgers. They seem way too comfortable in this series. You got to ruffle the apple cart. That's what the Mets have to do. They have not done that. It's been 2 frustrating losses. I'm more frustrated with game 1 than I was with game 2 because I just felt like game 2 was just a little bit shaky. Even though Bassett was on the mound, as soon as Bellinger hit that home run, the game felt over. At least in game 1, you kept on anticipating the Mets getting the base running here, base running there. Oh, here comes Alonso. Let's see if he can get a home run here. And it never happened. So game 1 was more frustrating than game 2. Yes, I was disappointed in Bassett. I mean, last year he gave up 11 home runs in total. He already has, I believe, 12 home runs. He gave up 15 home runs all year last year. He already gave up 12 home runs this year. So he's given up a lot more home runs, which is not good, especially in a year when home runs are down all throughout the board. And the Mets just did not get the job done. The Mets bats got to get going again. Find a way. Bunt. Do something. Anything to get on base. Put a little pressure on the defense. And the Mets really didn't do that. They struck out a lot in this series so far. And that was something that I talked about. One of the keys to the game is putting the bat on the ball. Let the defense make the plays. Put pressure on the defense. Well, the Mets seemed like they couldn't touch Gosselin. They couldn't touch Tyler Anderson. And you know what? They struck out too much. They didn't put pressure on the Dodgers. A couple of times they hit the ball. Chris Taylor made a couple of plays in this series already. All around the board, the Dodgers defense played well. So the New York Mets need to put pressure on the Dodgers. Early on, you can't mess around with Walker Buehler. Anytime you're facing a great pitcher, a ace of a staff, you want to get to him in the first 2 or 3 innings because after that, they shut you down. And I'm not confident over the next 2 games. At this point now, in the beginning of the series, I can see either team take a 3 or 4. And I told you, I didn't see any team sweeping either of each other. But at this point, going into game 3, the way the Mets looked, I'm not confident that the Mets can win a game in this series. Now, it's not the end of the world. Again, even if we lose 4 in a row against the Dodgers and the Braves win 4 in a row against the Dodgers, it would be 6.5 game lead. The Dodgers are looking like they're finding it a little bit, but at the end of the day, I'm more concerned about looking what the Mets do. Because if the Mets win ball games, it doesn't matter what the Braves do. So there we are right now. So today, Game 3 at 10 o'clock tonight on your East Coast. West Coast, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock Central Time. David Peterson on the mound for the Mets against Walker Buehler. Walker Buehler was 6-1 with a 3.22 ERA. And David Peterson with a 2 ERA. 2-0 with a 3.03 ERA. So, again, even though the Mets lost by 5 runs yesterday, before the 6th inning, it was only a 4-run ball game. The Mets found ways to come back in against teams before, and they couldn't do it against the Dodgers. The Dodgers have better pitching than the Mets faced all year. But you expect an offense, a veteran offense at that, to get the job done. So in today's game, the one key to the game, don't worry about David Peterson. Don't worry about the bullpen. Today, you focus on getting to Walker Buehler early. Do whatever you have to do to get on base. What the Mets didn't do in game 1 and 2 is work the counts. This is what I talked about. There was a couple of keys to the game. The two most important, working the count, getting the pitch count up of the starter. Even though the Dodger bullpen is good, you always rather get to a bullpen no matter what than rather keeping out a starter out there that's dominating you. At the very least, if you don't score runs, get the pitch count up. Let the pitcher work. Put pressure on him. Let him beat you. Too many times they were swinging early in counts that you can tell they were overly aggressive, and that's not the Mets ball club we know in 2022. The Mets need to change that tonight. Get it done. That's all. I don't know the lineup yet. I didn't see a lineup yet. So there we go. Will the Mets, and I put up a poll. I don't know what it looks like right now because I can't see it once I go live. It was 50-50 right before I went live of, are you concerned after the first 2 games of the Dodgers series? It was 50-50. I don't know what it is now. If you guys can tell me in the comments, I appreciate that. So I will be with you until 7 o'clock tonight. Once again, guys, don't forget to please hit on that like button. Don't forget to share the stream. And also, let people know if they're Met fans, baseball fans, to subscribe to the channel. All right, guys. So it's frustrating, but at the end of the day, we're still 8.5 games up in first place. That's still the most important part. That's why the Mets needed to have a good homestand for a situation just like this. I know I got the sunlight just lining up in my face right now, but we'll both deal with that. We knew that the Mets had to have a good homestand going into this 10-game road trip. That's what was the most important, was go 4-2, 5-1. Oh my God, 6-0. We went 6-0. It gave us a cushion for a situation just like this, because even though Met fans seemed a little bit more confident they wouldn't go to this early June swoon on the West Coast, there was always a doubt, and a lot of people said that this can be a possibility. And I even told you this before the homestand. If the Mets go 2-8 on the right after the homestand, we went 6-0. I said in the last Mets Talk Live right before the West Coast trip, I said, even if the Mets go 2-8, they gave them enough cushion where you have to have the Braves go 6, 7, 8 games, 8 out of 10 to really get Met fans nervous and catch up in this division. The Phillies just fired Joe Girardi. Rob Thompson took over. They beat up on the Angels yesterday 10-0. Phillies are a ways back. Until they're around 5 or 6 games back, I'm not going to worry about them. I am worried about the Braves, but at the end of the day, if the Mets do their job, you don't have to worry about anybody behind you. Again, even if the Mets go 2-8 on this 10-game homestand, that doesn't mean that we're going to be 3 or 4 games up by the end of this road trip. There's no guarantee of that. The Braves have to knock off around 7, 8 in a row, 8 out of 10, 9 out of 11, to either get really close to the Mets after this West Coast trip. The Braves are looking at chops right now. They know the biggest floor of the Mets over the last couple of years have been June and the West Coast trip. And unfortunately, June and the West Coast trip is in the same month. And that's why I think a lot of people are concerned. I'm more concerned at the fact that the hot offense that this lineup has showed over the last week and a half has been basically a 0, and they got to fix it. And I think they will, but I don't think it's going to be hard to beat Buehler tonight. It's going to be hard. Out of all the people I thought the Mets would get to, I would think it would be Urias. But then again, who knows? So the Mets got to get the job done. Get to Buehler early. Do what you got to do to get on base, put pressure on the Dodgers. All right, guys, so there's two other news that we have to get to that is a little bit of a concern, but not quite. But it is news nonetheless. First off, Max Scherzer obviously going through a little bit of his rehab, resting, so he can come back about around late June, early July. Max Scherzer got bit by his dog, and at first the report was his non-throwing hand, and then another report came out about a half hour after that it was his throwing arm. His dog bit his right hand. Apparently, it's not serious. It's not blocking him from continuing his rehab start or his rehab in general. It's not backing his rehab up or anything like that. Everything is still on schedule, but the dog did bite Scherzer's hand. So in 3 days, Lindor's finger got stuck in the door. Scherzer's throwing hand got bit by his dog. I mean, can you please wear batting gloves? Can you please wear anything? You know what? I even said this on Twitter. If you guys follow me on Twitter, I will be Lindor's personal door opener and closer for free. Just travel me around the country with the Mets. I do it for free. Let's go. And, obviously things happen. We've all probably jammed our finger in a car door, in a closet, whatever. Scherzer, the same thing with a dog. Sometimes you play fighting with your dog. The dog gets a little bit aggressive, might nibble a little bit too hard or bite on your hand a little bit too hard, and it happens. If you have a dog, cat, animal, you've always been there where something happens like that. But it just so happens that it happens in June, where all Met fans are scared of this month, and it's happening on a West Coast trip that people worry the most about. And it's just little stupid things that cause a downfall for no apparent reason. Like, of course, Lindor, who had a 10-game RBI streak, who is hot as a heater, gets hurt with his finger, misses game one. It seems like it was a trickle-down effect with the offense from there. Not saying if Lindor was in there game one, it would have made a difference, but who knows? So Scherzer should be okay. He's still on schedule to do everything he has to do with his rehab, even though the dog bit his hand. The last bit of news, Jacob DeGrom threw a bullpen session, 17 pitches, all fastballs. That was it. Nothing, no curveballs, no sliders, nothing. No changeups, just straight out fastballs, 17 pitches in a bullpen session on a mound. They did say that he might throw a little bit of live batting practice. That's fine as well. I'm not expecting him until probably mid to late July. Late July probably is more of a good starting point if everything goes well. Again, I'm not worried about the fastballs that are going to hurt his elbow, his shoulder, whatever. It's when he starts throwing his 90, 100 miles an hour fastball and then throws his 89 miles an hour slider. That's when it puts torque on the arm, the elbow, the shoulder. That's when you worry. That's when you want to really get to be like, all right, is he okay? So that's your news for the New York Mets. The Mets game is at 10 o'clock tonight. If you're on the East Coast, 7 o'clock, and West Coast, 8 if you're in Mountain Time. So say what's up in the chat, guys. I'm going to say what up to everybody in the chat right now. Lane, Steven, Sean, a member of Talking Mets and Rob. Grant, a member of Talking Mets and Rob. Joey, a member of Talking Mets and Rob. Thomas, Joseph, a member of Talking Mets and Rob. JD, Ruben, a member of Talking Mets and Rob. I don't play though. What's up, Rocky? Where are we? Keep it going. All right, so that's everybody that said what up in the chat. Christian, a member of Talking Mets and Rob. Oh, thank you, Christian. 54 votes in 50-50. Okay, so again, I'm not going to come up here and say I'm overly concerned because I was more concerned about doing very well in the homestand just for this particular reason. Look, if this road trip is the worst road trip of the year for the Mets and they go 2-8, 3-7, if this is the worst road trip or the worst stretch that the Mets have all season, they're still on pace to win 96, 97 games, even with that type of loss, because we do come back home. Yes, we're facing the Brewers and stuff like that, but I think the Mets are going to be okay. Again, even if they get swept by the Dodgers, I think it was just a bad sign that the Dodgers got swept by the Pirates and they were coming in, licking their chops, ready to go. They were going to be focused in this series. It was just a matter of if the Mets were going to punch them early right away, or the Dodgers were going to be like, all right, we're not letting this happen. Not only this, everybody's talking about the Mets. Dodgers know that. They're ready to go. But I believe the homestand was more important than this 10-game West Coast trip. That's the way I'm seeing it right now. All right, so let me just see what's up. Lane says, go Mets win. Steven says, hello, everyone. Sean says, hello, Rob. Grant says, hello, Rob. Joey says, Rob, people are losing it here over a couple of losses in a row, 10-game lead and they've been playing harder than the past 4 or 5 years this early already. I've been through 52 seasons, and this is it. I agree with that. Again, we had a 10.5 game lead. Now it's down to 8.5. I think that's why people got a little concerned. I mean, I was listening to sports radio at work today, and you all heard people saying, see how fast 10.5 games go to 8.5 in a game? Well, yeah, if you lose 2 in a row and the team behind you wins 2 in a row, it happens pretty quickly. Again, even if the Mets come out of this road trip 4.5 games up of the Braves, we're still in the lead. That's why it's good to have a big lead for a situation just like this. But the Mets can lose 4 to the Dodgers and then dominate the Padres and Angels series. Again, no guarantee, but we'll see. But I'm not totally concerned just yet. Tomas says, what up, Rob? I said if we split, we will be okay. Down to already, the offense has been silent. Hope the Cavalry get well soon. Well, again, we all thought a split. We would be happy with a split. Obviously, we'd be ecstatic if we took the series. Obviously, we can't do that, so we'll go with try to get the split, but it's going to be tough. Again, even if we lose 3 out of 4, or even if we get swept, it's still not the end of the world because it does matter what the Braves do as well. We can lose the next 2 and the Braves can lose the next 2. Well, we knock another two games off the schedule and still have an 8.5 game lead going into the Padres series with 6 games to go on the West Coast. So it does matter what the Braves do as well, not just what the Mets do. Obviously, you want them to see, if the Mets play well tonight and still lose, will you be happy? Will you be somewhat satisfied that they played well? They just happened to lose the game because the Dodgers are a bit better? No, you're not going to be happy. But you also be unhappy as well if they lose 6-0 tonight. So it's how they lose. If the Mets, lost a 2-1 ball game in game 1, you would still be upset they didn't get the job done. Yesterday, if they would have lost 7-6, we would have complained about the pitching. So it's the way the Mets lost that I think is more concerning than it is the Mets just losing a ball game. JD says, hello, Rob. I tried to warn you about this series and the Dodgers. Your chat didn't listen or take it seriously. I don't think we didn't take it seriously. I think people were with the fact that you didn't give the Mets enough respect. And just because the Dodgers beat the Mets in 2 games, they were the same team going into that series that could not beat Pittsburgh. So it's not about showing respect. We were showing respect. We know the Dodgers are a really great team. But it does show like even you and many other people were not giving a lot of respect to the Mets. And you can also say that the fact that, well, are you going to give the Dodgers credit because the Mets don't have Scherzer, McGill, or DeGrom? And we didn't have Lindor in game 1. You could say that as well. For the most part, the Dodgers are nearly 100% healthy besides Muncy. The Mets are not even close to 100%. You can say that as well. When you got Trevor Williams and David Peterson in this rotation, when DeGrom or at least McGill and Scherzer should be pitching these next 2 games, yeah, as a Met fan, you could say, well, I mean, yes, we're facing one of the best team one of the best teams in baseball, but the Mets are also missing 3 of their starting pitchers, or at least not throwing DeGrom in there, Scherzer and McGill, who is basically 1-2 in their rotation. Basically, you could say that as well. You could say the Dodgers are beating up on a Mets team that has no rotation. You know, I mean, if the Mets would have scored runs in game one, the Mets could have won that ball game with no problem. I mean, only giving up 2 runs to the vaunted Dodgers, anybody would have signed up for that for Taijuan Walker. The Mets didn't get the job done offensively. Yesterday, Bassett just gave up home runs. He didn't pitch well. But you can also say that the Mets are an injured ball club going into the West Coast trip. You know, an injured club is not going to show their missing of their ace of the staff or a couple of guys in their rotation when you're playing the Phillies or the Nationals. It's not going to show up. That, you know, people are not going to be concerned about it because you can still beat those teams without those guys. The guys you need, like Scherzer, McGill, DeGrom, Lindor, you need those guys to beat a team like the Dodgers. So as much as you say, well, you're warning about the Dodgers, you can also say that the Mets basically have 3 guys or at least 2 guys out in their rotation that they're counting on every day who's a big part of this rotation that the Dodgers don't have to face. You know, would you have felt more confident or less confident if Scherzer and McGill were ready to go in this series as well? You probably wouldn't have felt as confident going into a Mets series against the Dodgers where the Dodgers lost 3 straight against the Pirates. So it's not just people are discounting the Dodgers. But Mets fans were confident that the Mets were going to play good. They haven't. So, you know, when you got Trevor Williams and David Peterson going instead of McGill and Scherzer, well, guess what? The Dodgers should win that ball game. It's just that simple. With their pitching staff and the lack of pitching staff with the Mets, the Dodgers should beat the Mets. If they didn't beat the Mets, it would probably look even bad on them. So you can look at it both ways in that situation. Ruben says, Mets luck would have it that they're playing against the Dodgers Aces at their house, but we'll be okay. Just a trip we'll have to put behind us. That's what we probably have to do, Ruben. Dodger fans, I didn't know that they were dirty trash talkers. Oh, yeah. Look, I don't think they're all are. There's a lot of good. Look, there's a couple of Dodger fans that follow my channel that are respectful. They root for their team. Of course, they're going to talk trash. I mean, that's what you do. You're a baseball fan. We talk trash when the Mets are doing good. Other teams do. Look, we see when the Phillies beat the Mets. All of a sudden, the Philly fans pop up in the chat and talk crap. It's just what baseball is. That's what baseball fans do. Well, the Mets did put a complaint in. I mean, I don't really care about that. You're a professional, go out there and play. But they did put a complaint in about the conditions of the road, video setup, and everything like that. No, JD, if you look at the rest of the league, and it's not the first time there was a complaint with Dodger Stadium and the roadside. It's not. There was 3 already. Pittsburgh did it. And also, earlier in the year, the Giants talked about it as well. It wasn't headline news because, well, nobody cares about the Pirates or the Giants other than the Giants on the West Coast. So, it's not about – I don't care about that. You're a professional. I don't care about the rap piss. I don't care about the working conditions. You're a professional ball player. Go out there and beat that team. But JD, as much as you want to talk about, nobody spoke up about the Dodgers and warning you or warning us. You can also look at the fact that the Mets are not 100% healthy going into this Dodger series as well. The Mets can beat the Phillies, the Nationals, other bad teams without those guys. But when you're facing teams like the Dodgers, the Padres, the Brewers at some point, and you're not 100% healthy, well, you can look into that. It's not 100% of excuse, but would you rather have Trevor Williams or would you rather have Max Scherzer in the rotation against the Dodgers? Of course. I don't play says, I'm not concerned about the Mets, but these results show that you should be worried about the Dodgers. Again, yeah, look, no matter if the Mets were 100% healthy or not healthy as they are right now, you have to be worried about the Dodgers. But let's be honest. If everybody forgets the Dodgers in 2015, the Mets didn't win a game against the Dodgers. When they got to the playoffs, the vaunted Dodgers couldn't beat the hapless Mets in the playoffs. So you can look at that side as well. You know, obviously it's different if you have DeGrom, Scherzer, and McGill in the rotation against the Dodgers than you have Trevor Williams, David Peterson, and a guy like Taijuan Walker who can be a hit or miss, who is good on game one. Again, I think the best opportunity for the Mets to split the series was at taking at least one of those games with Bassett and Walker on the mound. They took 0. So, why should I feel confident in Peterson and Williams going into these next 2 games against Buehler and Urias? I'm not. I'm not going to lie to you guys and say no. Yeah, I mean, even great teams lose to bad teams. We saw it with the Dodgers. So there's no reason. If this was the Nationals beating up on the Mets, maybe you can be a little bit concerned. But being concerned about the Mets losing to the best team, one of the best teams in baseball, when you're not 100% healthy, is kind of just being a little bit overly emotional with a team that gave themselves enough cushion for problems like they're having against the Dodgers. Rocky, I agree with you. We can't win them all, but it would look nice to actually try to look like the offense is actually in LA. Steven, yeah, Walker did pitch good the other day. Again, the Dodgers didn't play well in that Pittsburgh series. They, like I said, in game 1, the Dodgers were trying to give the Mets that ball game. You saw that horrible base running that I talked about before the series started, right? They almost gave the Mets a chance to come back in that ball game with their terrible base running. And that's one of the things that the Mets always took advantage of. They just didn't in game 1. Yeah, like I said, I consider Buehler one of the better pitchers in baseball. He does struggle later down the stretch, but at the end of the day, I still see that guy as an ace of the staff and one of the better pitchers in baseball. Yeah, but also, we saw Mets face pitchers that were dominating everybody all year. And then the Mets came to town, or the Mets faced that pitcher and hit well. The Mets scored, I believe it was 56 runs over the last week before the West Coast trip. You're looking at that, you're looking for a dry spell. And with a Mets team that doesn't hit a lot of home runs, if 2 or 3 guys are not hitting, it's hard to bunch 4, 5, 6 hits together to score runs when a team doesn't hit a lot of home runs other than Pete Alonso. And that was obvious what happened. And that's exactly what happened. You can say that the pitchers did well. Sure. The Dodgers played good defense as well. The Mets hit a couple of balls hard that the Mets got a couple of guys in scoring position or on base. Might have changed it. You know what? It's a lot easier for a pitcher to pitch from the windup than the stretch sometimes as well. You would have put some couple people on base, put pressure on the pitcher. Maybe it would have been different. These are the same pitchers that couldn't beat the Pirates. So is it possible the pitchers just dominated the Mets? Absolutely. But there's no doubt about it that the Mets could have just got cold when they were streaking hot going into this West Coast trip. And, I'm not giving the Dodgers credit. They played all aspects of the game well. Even in game 1, when they basically tried to give the Mets the ball game, they still played well enough to win the ball game. And that's what great teams do. They play well enough when not playing as well to win the ball game. Yeah, Grant, just his throwing hand, again, I don't think it's too much of an issue. But again, we don't really know. We'll see until he starts throwing the ball. At the moment, he's still, nursing his oblique. He's not throwing the ball yet, so who knows? I don't play. It says Mets are a completely different team when Max and Grom come back. Fact that they're doing this well with Bassett as a 1 is beyond impressive. Absolutely. And you also have, it's funny how, and including Met fans, that when I was listening to Sports Talk Radio and other fans of other teams, specifically Yankee fans as well, at my job, on Sports Talk Radio, everybody's like, oh my God, here comes the Mets. They wait for the West Coast trip to play bad. But yet nobody talks about the fact that we're losing 2 mainstays in our rotation that would have been pitching in this series. And people just leave that part out. And you didn't have Lindor for game 1, which shouldn't have mattered. The Mets only should have scored a couple of runs to win that ball game when the Dodgers were trying to give it to them. I love how when even JD did this just now as well. He's talking about warning us about the Dodgers, but doesn't talk about the Mets injuries. And guess what? Met fans do the same thing when they're panicking and being emotional. And fans of other teams, specifically guys that I work with that are Yankee fans, that be like, oh, here come the Mets. Here comes the June swoon. Here they're gonna choke. Well, if you leave out everything except for the final score and just be like, oh, look, the Mets aren't that good. They're going to have problems. They're going to lose this division. If you don't put the whole story in, like I am trying to do, you're just going to bypass the whole issue of the Mets don't have Scherzer. The Mets don't have McGill. The Mets haven't had DeGrom the whole season, and they've still been this impressive. A lot of these guys stepped up. But at the end of the day, there's still 2 losses, and they're bad losses. Can the Mets change that? Of course they can. Could they beat up on Buehler tonight? Why the hell not? Listen, if the Pittsburgh Pirates can hit the Dodger pitching, then the New York Mets can hit the Dodger pitching. As I said before the series started, go by game basis. Don't look at game 1 as the problem for game 2. Game 1 was a problem within itself. Game 2 was a problem within itself. Game 3 could be a problem or a benefit within itself. Got to take it a game-by-game basis. Not what happened in game 1 is going to affect game 3, because it's not. Ruben, West Coast trip is never kind to the Mets? Of course not. No, we know that. You see, JD, but you talk about that when it comes to these people. Oh, look when they get Trout back and Muncy and Haney and Kershaw and Rios back. But when the Mets get DeGrom, Scherzer, McGill, all those guys back, Trevor May, all those guys back, well, obviously the Dodgers are going to look different with those players. Obviously the Mets are going to look better with those players. So when you can say, well, the Dodgers are missing that, and not bring up the Mets are missing those guys, but giving all the credit in the world to the Dodgers, it's not fair either way. If the Mets were beating up the Dodgers in his first 2 games, I guarantee, JD, you were saying, well, look what the Dodgers are missing, right? Even with the Dodgers missing those guys, they still have an all-star lineup. They still have an all-star pitching rotation. They still got an all-star bullpen. The Mets don't. It's just that simple. I guarantee you, if you take Buehler, Kershaw, and Gosselin out of the Dodgers rotation, they're probably not going to be as good as they are right now. They would lose a lot more games. So take away 3 pitchers that are supposed to be in your rotation, and whatever best pitcher you want on the Dodgers, Buehler, whoever you want. Say if you take out Gosselin and he didn't start the season at all, he'll be in the same position as DeGrom. He's not coming back until the end of July. Well, the Dodgers probably might have lost a few more games. So you can look at it either way. So you can't make an excuse for the Dodgers. Well, look how much better they would be if they had those players. But when the Dodgers win, you warn us. But if the Dodgers would have lost, you would use the excuse, just like I am, that the Mets are losing 3 out of their best 5 pitchers. So you can look at it either way. The Dodgers clearly will be better with those players. Well, guess what? The Mets will clearly be better with those guys, Scherzer, May, McGill, DeGrom. It's a whole different ballgame. Both teams will look a lot different with all those players healthy. But for the most part, the Dodgers are almost entirely healthy. And let's be honest, the Dodgers are not counting on Kershaw. They might be counting on Muncy. They might be counting on Trinan. Fine. But they had the majority of their pitching staff perfectly fine. And, if you're a Dodger fan and counting on Kershaw, when you got Buehler, when you got Urias, when you got Gosselin, when you got Anderson, well, you're just not paying attention. I can assure you the guys that you just spoke about, Kershaw, Haney, Muncy, Trinan, and Rios, is not as much important as DeGrom, Scherzer, McGill, and May is for this New York Mets team. Just that simple. So you can't bring up players for the Dodgers and not bring up players that the Mets are missing and then say that the Dodgers are superior. And you warned us about them, but the Mets were going in unhealthy. And that's why a lot of people worry. Who knows? The Mets could have been totally different if the Mets had DeGrom, Scherzer, and McGill in this series. You just don't know. It could have ended up the same outcome. You don't know. Steve and I agree. We got to play small ball. I think you got to put pressure on the defense. For some reason, they were swinging at a lot of pitches early in the count. They weren't working the count like they normally do. And Nimmo, ever since he came back from the injury, has been slumping. And this is what Nimmo does. When he comes back from an injury, he struggles for a week and a half, and then he finds it again. And that's what Nimmo's been his entire career. I never said I was not concerned about the Dodgers. I said that the fact that nobody's given enough credit, especially non-Met fans, for what the Mets have done with all the injuries. I never said I wasn't concerned about the Dodgers. Either JD or both of you read it wrong or heard me wrong. I never said I'm not concerned about the Dodgers. I said not enough people are giving credit, or not enough people are giving Mets any chance of winning against the Dodgers. Again, obviously after 2 games, you can come on the comments and say, well, look, it's obvious that Robert didn't know what he was talking about. No. Before the series, I think the Mets had as good as chance as the Dodgers to split the series. I never said I wasn't concerned. If you heard that, you heard wrong. I never said I wasn't concerned about the Dodgers. I said that the Mets are not getting enough credit for what they have done going into the Dodgers series. And if you looked at a lot of the Dodgers social media pages and you looked at the fans, what they were talking about, they weren't very confident in going into this Mets series after they got swept by the Pirates. They knew they have a good team, but that they weren't very, very confident going into the Mets series either. And I can assure you, when they look at the Mets team and they see this rotation, they're going to be like, well, we should win this series. They should win this series. The Dodgers at this current moment are better than the Mets currently constructed. There's no doubt about that. And I never said that I wasn't concerned. I also said I wouldn't be surprised if the Mets win 3 out of 4. I wouldn't be surprised if the Dodgers win 3 out of 4. How is that not being concerned about the Dodgers? Now, I did say that I didn't see either team sweeping one another. I did say that. I would be shocked before the series started to see the Mets sweep or the Dodgers sweep the series. Obviously, it looks a lot better for the Dodgers because they won the first 2. But not being concerned about the Dodgers is maybe what you guys wanted to hear, not what I said. Joey. When DeGrom, Scherzer get back in the rotation, this ball club will be in another level of confidence, even going up against it. Exactly. Like, I don't think it's the Mets' confidence. Look, after a 6 games winning streak and 6 game sweep of a homestand and 56 runs scored in the last 6 days, the Mets were confident going in. There was no doubt about that. Was it a little wrinkle that DeGrom, that Lindor couldn't be in the lineup, hurt himself? Maybe. But they were confident going in. And I think they were going in confident, thinking they can win that ball game. Again, after game 1, for the most part, it was evenly matched. Nobody outperformed anybody. The Dodgers just got a couple of more hits and a couple of more runs that got them the ball game. Anybody after game 1 would have said anybody could have won that ball game. Nobody's going to say the Dodgers were murderers row in that game when they only scored 2 runs and couldn't get out of their own way in game 1. Game 1, the Dodgers were trying to give that game to the Mets, and the Mets didn't take advantage of the mistakes that the Dodgers gave them during that game. Game 2, a couple of home runs, and that is the difference in the ball game. That's why when you look at the Dodgers, who 5 or 6 guys in their lineup are power hitters who can take you deep, when the Mets have 1. That's a problem. And you saw it there, the 2 to the 2-run home runs, the 3-run home runs aren't coming on an everyday basis for the Mets like they are for a team like the Dodgers. You saw what the Phillies did against the Angels yesterday. They're capable of hitting multiple home runs a game or multiple 2-run, 3-run home runs a game that change the outcome of a ball game. There's enough time. The Mets had a couple of guys on base, even though they had 3 hits. They had a guy on base here and there. The Dodgers made a couple of defensive plays. The big thing is, after game 1, there was nobody saying, "Oh, look how good the Dodgers are." They just got outpitched. That's it. Yeah, I was surprised that Nick Plummer hasn't played in a couple of days. It's a little weird, but we'll see if he plays today. JD says, I think the Dodgers stay even keel and take the Mets seriously and prepare for them. Well, that's a kind of a not a good statement, JD, honestly, because so they can stay even keel and take the Mets seriously, but they're not even keel taking the Pirates seriously. That's losses against the Mets and losses against the Pirates count as the same amount of losses. So then that's a bad sign for the Dodgers because they're going to lose a lot of games this year if they play bad teams and play down their level. And just because they beat the Mets 2 games, you can't say they're even keel and take the Mets seriously. Of course they're going to take the Mets seriously. They should take every series, every team seriously. Now, you can say, all right, they played down to their opponents, but what happened after game 1? What happened after game 2? They just said, I don't want to play today. Let the Pirates sweep us. No. So don't not give credit to the Dodgers or don't critique them or be critical of them when they get swept by the Pirates, but give them all the credit in the world when they beat the Mets and say they're serious. Like, that's no way to say a team is good or bad. The Dodgers just played bad against the Pirates. They got outperformed by the Pirates. The Dodgers are outperforming the Mets in the first 2 games. That's it. Okay, first off, Kershaw is not an ace anymore. If you call him an ace, you're fool's gold. All right? Buehler, Gosselin, Anderson are all better right now at this moment than Kershaw. Andrew Heaney is good, but he is still not better than those 3 guys at the current moment. Trinan, granted, but the Dodgers also have 3 other arms in that bullpen that is seriously good. Gravasol, they got Hudson. Those guys are extremely good. Yeah, they're missing Trinan, but they're also, they still have a good team. Kimbrel has been good this year. He's struggled a tad, but they still have the arms to make up for a Trinan loss. Kershaw and Heaney, the Dodgers are not missing them. I mean, come on. You got Walker Buehler, Gosselin, and Anderson. Every one of those guys are better than every pitcher on the Mets staff at this current moment. So the Dodgers are not without their aces. Buehler is your ace. Just because he's not having the best ERA, Buehler's your ace. Gosselin's basically your number 2. Gosselin's been your best pitcher, along with Tyler Anderson. It's interesting to think that you can talk about Kershaw and Heaney, but you haven't brought up once they're missing DeGrom, Scherzer, and Miguel. If you don't bring that up, how can I take your comments seriously about injuries to the Dodgers, but not injuries to the Mets that hurt the Mets a hell of a lot more than they hurt the Dodgers? Just that simple. The Dodgers bullpen is elite, even without Trinan, by the way. Let's see. Thank you, Christian. 5149. Yes, I'm not surprised that it's nearly that close. I mean, that's Met fans in a nutshell. Eric, how you doing? Scherzer made a statement on Twitter. All right, let's see if I can find it really quick. Let's see. Give me a second, guys. I was trying to find Scherzer's comment. Let me just find it. Alrighty. All right, so Max Scherzer tweeted about an hour ago. Just clearing a few things up. My dog Raffy hurt her leg on a run. She was howling in pain, and I went to calm her down by putting my hands on her. When I did that, she bit my right hand. Fortunately, it wasn't a bad bite. I took one day off from throwing and was able to long toss the next day. This will have no effect on my rehab, and this is literally a non-story. So there you go. So not too concerned about Scherzer. And the Mets lineup just came out, and I'll say that in a little bit. Yeah, JD, but I don't care about in the past. That is irrelevant when it comes to this year. Absolutely irrelevant. The Mets team of last year is totally different from this year. You know, yeah. Actually, granted, the Dodgers were a better team than the Mets last year the entire year. I never had confidence in the Mets team, even when they were in first place last year. This team is different. Again, JD, you keep on giving all the credit in the world to the Dodgers, but I guarantee you, if the Mets would have won these first two games, you would have said all the excuses in the world. No Haney, no Trinan, no Kershaw, no Rios. You would have said that in a heartbeat. The point is, you can't claim injuries for the Dodgers if they're losing, but when they're winning, the Dodgers take the Mets seriously. We know that. You keep on saying the same comment. We know that they respect the Mets. The Mets respect the Dodgers. And stop bringing up years past because it's irrelevant for this year at this moment. And they didn't have DeGrom for their 22-5 losing stretch the past few seasons. Look at the seasons. And if you look at 2020, doesn't count. 2021, DeGrom was out right before the All-Star break. He didn't pitch after the All-Star break, which was around 70 games after that. So, and that was when the West Coast trip was ready to happen. Around the August time, right after the All-Star break. Because right after the All-Star break, the Mets went to Pittsburgh without DeGrom. And then the West Coast trip happened in August because I was on the West Coast during that awful West Coast trip. Yeah, I don't think the Braves are going to catch the Mets. I think they're going to make it interesting, absolutely. But, I mean, what are the Braves won 3 in a row, if I'm not mistaken? So, again, I've always thought, now, I never said this division was over. I never said that. You might have heard other Met fans or radio hosts in New York say that this division is over. I never say the division is over. All I have to say, if you want to bring up the past, 7 with 17 to go. Met fans know what that means. I never look at a division is over until everybody plays 162 and the season is over and the records are in. That's it. Could the Mets still win this division and never give up the division? Absolutely. Do I think the Braves are going to make it interesting? Absolutely. One, because they got the championship pedigree. Granted, I think it hurts that they don't have Freeman, but that doesn't mean they're still not a really good team. They are. They're just not playing to their potential. Again, they might not play to their potential the whole year, but I still think they're going to make it interesting. And if anybody thought that the Mets were just going to stroll to the NL East with a 10-game lead the entire year, you're not paying attention. You don't know what's going on in a regular baseball season. It's always happens. You always see teams with 10-game leads with 100 games to go, and they sneak out the division by 2 games. That's probably going to happen. Just that simple. The Mets are going to have a stretch probably in a West Coast trip where they might go 3-7, 2-8, and the Braves might go 8 out of 10, and guess what? They're right back in the division. But do I think the Mets can this year, not last year, this year, do I think this Mets team can hold on to the division lead? Yes. And the reason why is because guys are going to get healthier. Because Scherzer's coming back. Because McGill should be back by the end of the week. By the end of next week. I feel confident. Now, I'm not even bringing DeGrom into this. If Scherzer and McGill come back healthy, I'm not worried about it. I do think the Braves are going to make the playoffs. So, whichever way they do it, I think they're going to make the playoffs. Let's see. Yeah, JD, and you know what? When the Dodgers come to town, I don't think it's next month. I think it's in August, if I'm not mistaken. When they come to town, hopefully both teams are healthy, and I mean extremely healthy. I want everybody healthy, so there's no back and forth. Oh, this guy's not healthy, that guy's not healthy. That's why we lost. Right now, if the Dodgers would have lost the first two games, and the Mets have lost the first two games, both sides would be using excuses about injuries, and they would be right to do so. You know, at the moment, the two best teams in the National League are the Mets and the Dodgers, right? If the Dodgers would have lost two in a row in his first two games, Dodger fans would have been talking about the injuries, and they would be right to talk about the injuries because yes, it sucks to not have Trinan. Yes, it sucks to not have Haney and Kershaw. Absolutely, but you can't give all the credit to the Dodgers and not bring up the fact that the Mets have injuries because the Dodger fans would have bring up the injuries as well if they would have lost. I guarantee you they were talking about it when they lost to the Pirates 3 straight. But at the end of the day, you still got 26-man roster. You still got to get the job done. The Mets didn't. The Dodgers did. Just that simple. Let's see. What else? Yeah. Again, Kershaw is good, but he's not. Listen, then the Dodgers shouldn't be winning games at all. If they're losing their ace, as you say, if you think Kershaw is better than Buehler and Gosselin and Anderson at this point, he might be pitching well, but at the moment he's not better than those guys. Then the Dodgers should be losing 9 out of 10 until Kershaw comes back. So I'm not saying Kershaw has been bad, but he's not the ace of the staff anymore. I can assure you he doesn't pitch. He's not going to pitch game 1 of a playoff series. He's not. I can assure you it's probably going to be Buehler. It might be even Gosselin. Depending on the matchup, I doubt Kershaw's pitching in game 1. For the most part, Kershaw's probably a number 4. Probably play game 4 in a 7-game series. Who goes for the Mets in San Diego? Looking at it, it's probably going to be Carrasco pitching for the first game, and then it'll probably be Walker and Bassett going in that series. Yeah, that's one thing about the Dodgers. Yeah, they spent a lot of money, but a lot of their pitchers are all homegrown, and that's awesome to see. And that's something that the Mets and other teams that spend a lot of money, the reason why the Dodgers are different than most teams is not only because why I think the Dodgers are predominant, 100% better than the Angels who spend a hell of a lot of money. The problem is the Dodgers always find guys in their farm system with great arms. If that's starters, if that's relievers, they always find a way to get homegrown talent with arms. And that's why they're so successful. Not just because they spent over $300 million. Yeah, that's wonderful. Yes, they got the Betts of the world with that. They got Freeman with that. Sure, absolutely. But look at the whole pitching staff. It's a lot of guys that came up through their system. And that's the way the Mets have to look at what the Dodgers do as a way to spend money, yes, but also develop arms in your farm system because you can buy the high-price bat. You can buy bullpen help. You can buy all the bats you want, but if you don't pitch well, you're probably not going to win. The difference with the Dodgers is that they've rarely had to spend a lot of money on rotation arms. That's why they had all that extra cash and put into Freeman, into Betts, and other players with big bats. And That is the difference with a lot of teams, because they might spend the money, but when you don't develop certain parts of your team with your farm system, it's going to hurt you down the road. And, that's why the Dodgers have been successful over the last 10 years and making the playoffs every year and being World Series favorites for a couple of years in a row. Even though they didn't get it done except for 2020, they're always there. And a big reason is because they develop arms in their system while spending money on the big bats. That's a recipe for success. That's what the Mets have to look at. Lane says, what do you want to see the Mets get at the deadline? At the moment, again, if you look at it right now, damn, I would love Luis Castillo in this rotation. I would like JD Martinez as our DH. But right now, because of injury, it's hard to see. Fully healthy, I don't think the Mets have to look at a starting pitcher. I think they can look at one or two bullpen arms and definitely another big bat in this lineup. I think that will only help protect Alonso. And you could see, if Alonso is not the guy hitting the home runs in his team, nobody else is doing it. They need an extra guy like that. Yeah, Frank, honestly, I felt the enthusiasm. Look, it felt like it was kind of a bummer that Lindor is not in that lineup for game one. But we know, look, can you take it out? Can you just, when you're a professional, and let's be honest, Guillorme was smoking hot as well. Again, he's not Lindor, but at the end of the day, the Mets only gave up 2 runs in that ball game. They should have won that ball game. You give up 2 runs against the Dodgers lineup, that's a win in my book. You should win that ball game. The Mets just didn't hit, and that was why they lost that game, not the pitching. Game 2, different story. Going down by 4, 5, 6 runs or 5 runs by the time Alonso hit the home run, that's mostly on the pitching staff. You can't give up 2 2-run home runs, and that demoralizes teams. That's why I say it's important for the Mets to get another big bat in here, a power bat, because running multiple hits together and scoring a couple of runs, yeah, it's disappointing, but it's not as demoralizing as a moonshot 2-3-run homer. That sucks the life out of teams. And you clearly saw the life get sucked out of the Mets last night when Bellinger hit that bomb of a home run for the first 2 runs of the ball game. It does. Let me see. All right, that's where I left off. All right, so can the Mets call up Vientos or Alvarez? I'm assuming you're talking about. Vientos, I think what they're doing here, and you see it already. Nick Plummer performed when he got his opportunities. That's why J.D. Davis is not. Why Dominic Smith is not in the majors right now. J.D. Davis is getting a lot of opportunities right now, but if he doesn't get, look, the DH, we need, with all the hitters we got who are not power hitters, who are average guys, who put the bat on the ball, we needed J.D. Davis or Dominic Smith to be the power bat with Alonso in this lineup. Dominic Smith hasn't done that. In total, between Davis and Dominic Smith, we have 1 home run. Nick Plummer has 2. So J.D. Davis is going to get the opportunity. I can almost guarantee you, if J.D. Davis doesn't perform, Nick Plummer is going to get the spot. I think J.D. Davis is going to get sent down as well, and Mark Vientos is going to be the next man up. So I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. JD, Rob, I am a fan of both the Dodgers and the Mets, LOL. Well, I don't consider real fans of either of multiple teams. And that goes for people who says, oh, I like the Mets and the Yankees. Oh, I like the Mets and the Dodgers. I like the Yankees and the Dodgers. I'm a Mets fan, but I'm also liking the Red Sox. I don't like that at all. And if you followed my page from day one, I call everybody out who says, I'm not really a Met fan, but I like the Mets, but I am a Yankee fan. Or I like the Dodgers. I'm a fan of the Dodgers and the Mets. So what were you doing in '88? Were you a fan of the Mets or the Dodgers? That's when I have problems with fans. 2015, when the Mets faced them in the divisional series, were you rooting for the Dodgers or the Mets? When you can't make that decision or you pick one of the teams, you're not a real fan. You might be knowledgeable on both fans, but can you consider yourself a real fan of a real team? No. And I'm sorry. I love you, JD. You always come with a lot of good points. We have conflicting. We agree sometimes. We don't agree. I appreciate that. But, and that goes for anybody in the chat. If you're a person who likes a team or a fan of a team, but like another team, when they play each other, what do? That's when I don't consider people fans of a real fan for a real particular team. I don't consider you a diehard Met fan. I don't consider you a diehard Dodger fan. So what are you? You can be knowledgeable. Like, I'm a diehard Met fan. I hate everybody other than the Mets. No doubt about it. But I also can be knowledgeable about other teams. And I was honest with you guys 2 days ago when I had the Mets Talk Live before the series, and I said, I am not no expert in the Dodgers because I don't watch them on an everyday basis like I do the Mets, like I do the Yankees, like I do the Braves and the teams in the NL East. I'll know more about them than the Dodgers. That's why when I talk about the Dodgers, I look at the stats. I don't look at what I've seen because I haven't seen the Dodgers a lot. I go by the stats. And there's a lot of Yankees or people at my job in general that says, oh, I'm a New York fan. And no, you either are a Yankee fan, you're a Met fan. You're either a Dodger fan or a Met fan. You're either a Dodger fan or a Yankee fan. You can be knowledgeable about the teams. You can watch more of the Mets and the Dodgers. But when you're a fan of both of those teams, or you're claiming you're a fan of both of those teams, then what the hell are you doing watching the Dodgers and the Mets? Like, you can't get excited at all. So, because who are you rooting for? So if the Mets would have won the first two games, JD Davis would be the biggest Met fan in the world. But the Dodgers won the first two games. Now he's a big Dodger fan. You can't have it both ways. And I hate fans like that because I don't consider you real diehard fans. Pick a team. That's it. Stick with them. If they're a losing team, listen, you want to go back last year in late July, August, and September where the Mets were basically falling apart? I was here every time, every live stream, every Mets talk, every Mets hot stove, when the Mets are falling apart. I took a freaking beating. You can ask people who've been in this chat, in this stream for a long time. JD, you probably know this. I'm here taking a beating. But I've always been, and that's from day one. There's a reason why my slogan for my channel, underneath my channel logo, says "For Real Met Fans." Because if you're like the Mets and you like another team, you're not a diehard fan of one team. So when they play each other, what are you a fan of? You know, you can't be a Met fan one day and a Dodger fan the next day and expect people to take. Now, your comments I always take seriously because liking two teams doesn't mean you're not knowledgeable about both teams. I would never say that. But when you say you are a fan of the Dodgers and a fan of the Mets, well, when they play each other, what the hell do you do? Like, do you have your left hand with Dodger blue, or do you have your right arm with Mets orange? Like, what do you do? Like, I just don't understand. When the Mets score, yay. When the Dodgers score, yay. It just doesn't make sense to me. It never made sense to me. And I call everybody out. I do it at my job. I do it on my streams. And I'm not going to step down and not call somebody out when I don't appreciate or I'm not going to back off on my opinion about people who like two different teams because that considers me. You might be a diehard baseball fan. You can say that. You could say I'm a diehard baseball fan who follow the Mets and the Dodgers. You could have said that. I'd appreciate it. But when you're a fan of both teams, then I don't even know how you root for a team when they're playing each other. I just don't. And that gives a guy like JD an out either way. Because if the Mets would have won the first 2 games, he would have been probably promoting the Mets and saying, oh, look how the Mets the goods are. Look how the Mets took the Dodgers seriously, but the Dodgers have injuries. Right now, he's pro-Dodgers because they're winning against the Mets. It doesn't work like that. You're not a fan of one particular team if you like other teams. I hate every team. I freaking hate the Pirates. I hate the Dodgers. I hate the Yankees. I hate the Red Sox. If you don't wear an orange and blue, I cannot stand you. Do I respect teams like the Dodgers? Absolutely. Do I respect teams like the Braves? Absolutely. But when you're a fan of 2 teams, you aren't a diehard fan of one team. That pisses me off because you can go either way the wind blows. That's the way you're going to go. It's not fair to the diehard fans who show confidence in their team, who fight for their team, who talk trash for their team. It works both ways. And there's a couple of people. There's a guy, Roberto and Robert, who are diehard Dodger fans who come on the stream every now and then, who talk about their Dodgers and promote, even when the Dodgers are playing bad, they show confidence in their team. They respect that their team is losing. They're critical of their team. When you're a team of when you're a fan of 2 different teams, or let me do this, fans of 2 different teams, you can be critical on any team you want to when the time calls for it. That is a bandwagon fan. And JD, you might not like what I'm saying, but it's the God's honest truth. I do not like people who says, oh, I'm a Met fan and I'm a Yankee fan. I like both teams. Yeah, I don't deal with that. I love you, JD. You can continue to be on the stream. You got knowledge of the game of baseball, and I love that. But when you come in here and talk about you're a fan of both teams, you're officially a fan of none of them. You're just not. You're knowledgeable on both of those teams. Great. And I appreciate that, and I respect that. But I don't respect the fact that you're a fan of both teams because you cannot be a fan of 2 different teams. It does not work. It doesn't work. You can't be representing and wearing a Dodger jersey when they're in the World Series, and when the Mets make the World Series, you got a Met shirt. You got a Met jersey on. It pisses me off to no end. And you can see it in my face. You can see it in my voice. I do not appreciate fans who say, I'm a fan of 2 different teams, because you got a way out. When you're a diehard Met fan and they're choking down the stretch in 2021, you are miserable. If you look back to my streams last year, I was effing miserable. If I was a fan of the Dodgers and the Mets, well, why would I even bother with the Mets? I might as well root for the Dodgers now because, well, they're in first place. Oh, they're going to the playoffs, possible World Series. That's called a bandwagon fan. You know, those fans, when in 2015, and I seen it everywhere, when the Mets were making that run in the playoffs, all of a sudden I see Mets hats everywhere, when before that I saw Yankee hats everywhere. Bandwagon fans. I don't like them. JD, I respect your baseball knowledge. I love that you get at us with your baseball knowledge and we go back and forth. I appreciate that. I respect that. But being fans of 2 different teams don't do nothing for me. I'm just looking at the comments. Look, I hate the Tigers too. We don't play them often, but I hate them too. Honestly, I do not appreciate people, or I don't respect your fandom. Your baseball knowledge, I do. And this, JD, I'm not trying to get on you, but you actually put a super chat and basically called yourself out for being a fan of 2 different teams, when that is the definition of a bandwagon fan. Because if the Mets are doing bad, you can throw on your Dodger jersey and nobody will call you out on it. I will. I promise you that. Anybody. That goes for anybody in the chat. Anybody. You know what also I hate? I hate when, like, every now and then I'll go to a Yankee game that when they're not playing the Mets. I will not disrespect a team and wear a Mets hat or a Mets jersey at a Yankee game when the Mets are not playing. I don't. I'll be 100% neutral. There's too many people at Yankee Stadium, at Citi Field, around the league that are wearing jerseys of their favorite team, and that team is not playing in that stadium that day. It makes no sense to me. And that also annoys me because that just shows that either you're trying to be an ass, you're trying to be disrespectful to the home team and both teams that are playing. It makes no sense. You're looking for fans to get on you in the entire game. We see it at Citi Field every game. There's always a couple of guys that wear Yankee jerseys with the names on the back, which are fake jerseys. You're going to get called out. You are looking for fans to get on you. That's another thing I hate. When I go to a game, now sometimes I might be in a state where I see the home, the Giants playing at home against, I don't know, pick a team, the Diamondbacks. I will go to San Francisco and Oracle Park. That's awesome. I want to see the stadium, different vibe. I don't have no rooting interest, so I can enjoy the stadium more. I'm not really rooting for any of the teams. I'll clap for a nice play, big plays in the game. Oh, that's a great play, stuff like that. But you're never going to see me in a ballpark where the Mets are not playing outside of Citi Field wearing Mets stuff when the Mets are not playing. It just does not make sense to me. So 2 pet peeves: a fan of 2 different teams and wearing a jersey in a ballpark where your team's not playing. Just stupid to me. Yeah, I'm a Mets fan. I live and die a Mets fan, just like a lot of you guys in the chat. That even if you're not a Mets fan, even if you are a Tigers fan or a Astros fan or a Dodger fan, live and die by that team. And it's not fair to diehards when a guy like JD, who I respect with the baseball knowledge, who says I'm a fan of the Dodgers and Mets, nobody's going to take you seriously. And I'm not looking at all the chats, all the comments, but I guarantee you people are going after JD right now like you can't be a fan of 2 different teams. You just can't be. It doesn't make sense. Can you enjoy watching 2 teams? If you're a baseball fan, JD, if you would have said I'm a baseball fan, but I follow the Mets and the Dodgers, I would have had no problem with that. There's a lot of people like that who never really fell in love with a team, but love the game of baseball and like to watch the Dodgers or the Mets or the Yankees or whatever, 2 different teams. Saying you're a fan of 2 different teams, you got no respect in the fandom column. It's just that simple. And you're not the only one, JD. There's many people like that. Many people. And I can guarantee you there's a Met fan that says, well, I like the Red Sox too. Well, go away. I don't want you here. It's just that simple. Exactly. It's Mets or nothing. It's Dodgers or nothing. It's Red Sox or nothing. It's Yankees or nothing. I appreciate the real Yankee fans. And there's a girl that I know that I played softball with when I was like 11 years old, 12 years old. We were on the same softball team. It was a mixed softball league when I was younger. I used to play it in my elementary school baseball field or softball field. She was a diehard Yankee fan since the day I met her. We were always best friends, and we always got on each other when the Mets and Yankees played. When the Mets were better, when the Yankees were better, we always got on each other. But we never pivoted from our team. We always took the beating when our team wasn't doing well. Luckily for her, the Yankees have been good basically her entire life. Good for her. But she always stuck with them. Even when the Yankees weren't playing well last year, and I was texting her, I was like, hey, look at your Yankees. She took it. But she never faltered. You could be a Yankees fan or a Mets fan, and you still want to see, you're not rooting for the Yankees to win, but it's always more fun when the Mets and the Yankees are both good in the city. It's always fun because you can talk crap back and forth. Like this year, it's kind of fun. But to be a team or to pick 2 teams and then say, when one team's doing bad and you roll over to the other team, this doesn't work for me. JD, I appreciate it, buddy. And like I said, you can be you also. Look, if you think personally you're a fan of the Mets and the Dodgers, that's you. I just don't respect the fandom because you can go wherever the wind blows better, you're going that way. And that's not considered a diehard. That's okay. If you don't consider yourself a diehard, that's fine. Just checking the comments, guys. M62M says, I enjoy any team playing against the Yankees. Again, you don't like the Yankees. I don't like the Yankees either. I do hate all the teams in Major League Baseball other than the Mets. Just that simple. I just don't like any of them. I don't have to have a reason. I just don't like them. That's it. They're not my team. Do I get a little bit of pleasure when the Yankees are starting to lose a little bit and they're faltering? I love it. And I can assure you, even though a lot of Yankee fans might say, oh, I don't want to see the Mets do bad. Yes, you do. If you're a Yankee fan, you want to see the Mets do well. You want to be on that back page of the Daily News and the New York Post and all the other papers in the city. You don't want to see the Mets do well because it takes away from the spotlight. That's when people is like, oh, I want a Subway Series. Why? Why do you want both teams to get the same amount of spotlight in a Subway Series World Series? Obviously, I want my Mets there alone, but I'd rather see one team there or the other so that one team can get all the spotlight in the city. James, I don't know how you survive. No, I'm joking. Let me just check the comments, guys. Don't worry. I'm just scrolling through right now to check the comments out really quick. Yeah, you can go to war with Yankee fans. Listen, I don't go after Yankee fans for no apparent reason. Like when the Mets play the Yankees, and I'm at like last year, I was at Yankee Stadium for the 4th of July games, the doubleheader. I was there at Yankee Stadium. I was in left center field by the Mets bullpen, right over there. They have that little table area where you can stand up most of the time. Me and like 10 other Met fans were there, or maybe 15, maybe more than that. And we were going crazy. We were on bed. Yankee sucks chants, which is, common for any fan base to say about the other team. That team sucks. Let's go Mets chants. We were doing that. But I never go after like one fan in general, if that makes sense. Oh, yeah, Joey, listen, I wouldn't either. Like I said, I enjoy baseball. I love the game of baseball. It's my favorite sport. I like to go, like, if I'm in a state where the Mets are not playing and there's a baseball game there, I try to go to the game. Like, when I was in Colorado, I went to an Avalanche playoff game because it was there and the prices were like, it was like $90 to get to a playoff game. I was like, hell yeah. And you know what? I actually wore a regular hoodie. I was very neutral. It was just cool to hear the different, to be in a different stadium or arena other than your team's stadium or arena. It's a different perspective. You see how fans cheep. You see how they root, what chants they have and stuff like that. I always think it's crazy how almost every fan base have different chants, different let's go, whatever chants or stuff like that. Like with the who was it? With Pittsburgh, it's go Pens go and stuff like that. Everybody has different chants, and I like to experience that. And it was fun. I didn't care who won, but it was fun nonetheless. Well, Eric, when you hit a nerve, that's what happens. And I can assure you, when somebody says something you don't like, you go on a rant as well. And that's what I do. And again, I don't like bandwagon fans. I don't like fans who say they like two teams. You're not a fan or a diehard of one team. Then you're not a real true diehard fan of one team. So whatever team's doing well at that moment, you can push towards that team. And that's a definition of a bandwagon fan. I don't like them. When will the Padres? Well, the Padres are like the Mets. Even though the Padres have been better than the Mets the last couple of years, the Padres have a lot to prove as well. They've choked the last couple of years as well. They fell apart. They have a lot to prove as well. Juan, have a good day. Jose? I think it was Jose. Sorry. Somebody had to go. Well, I don't know who it was, but there you go. Have a good day. Juan, there you go. Have a good day. Well, I don't think anybody likes Michael Kay except for Yankee fans. I mean, Jesus. He's just, I just don't like him. And that's the reason why I don't listen to ESPN radio, because I don't like Michael Kay. He's terrible. JD says the Padres will collapse. I think a lot of people agree with that. They're missing Tatis, obviously. They played pretty well this year. But again, they're a team that has to prove it. It's just that simple. Yeah, you know what? You know what's funny? When the Mets won the World Series in 2015, I was never one to troll, because you know what? Listen, it's obvious. When the Mets were in the World Series in 2015, Yankee fans were completely quiet until after the Mets lost the World Series. That's when they started to speak up again. I don't go after other teams. If the only fan base I go after is the team I'm facing in a big game or a big series. That's it. I'm not going to troll a Yankee fan if the Mets and, I don't know, pick a team. The Astros are in the World Series. I might get the Astro fans a little bit more because, they're cheaters. But I'm not going to go after the Yankee fan because I don't care about the Yankee fan at that aspect in time. You know when I care about them? In July and August when we face them. So I know everybody has their own ways of doing it, but the Mets win the World Series. I'm focused on focusing on that team and focusing on the Mets. Rocky, I think everybody would love a Giants and Jets Super Bowl. It's just that it's rare when both teams are good at the same time. And that sucks. And I'm not a Jet or a Giant fan. I'm not. I'm a Cowboys fan. So, my dad, he's a diehard Jet fan. Most of my family's Giant fans. So it's like, I mean, if the Giants and the Jets were in the Super Bowl, I'm going with my dad. I'm going to root for the Jets. But, I don't get pleasure out of seeing the Giants win. I don't. I'm a Cowboys fan. Why would I want the Giants to win? I wanted Brady to smoke them, but both times he did it. So, you see, Todd, when it comes to that, now, I don't know, what was he, a Met fan? Was he a Yankee fan or whatever? It's very easy for now, I don't consider your someone a diehard fan. They're not. If you can switch teams that easily, you're not a diehard fan. You might be a baseball fan, and hey, I'm moving to Southern Cali. I might as well be a Dodger fan. Well, no. Look, I plan on moving to either Texas, Florida, North Carolina. You know damn well I'm wearing my Mets stuff no matter where I go. I don't care. I really don't. I walked the grounds of Philadelphia last year in the opening series against Philadelphia for the opening series. I walked all around Philadelphia with my Mets stuff. I don't care. I'm representing no matter where I am. If you don't like it, that's your problem. But I am not going to be an idiot and go to Yankee Stadium wearing a Mets hat and Mets jersey when the Yankees are facing the Tigers. It's not doing it. But Todd, I would block him. Honestly, I would, because they're not a real fan. Whatever fan he was prior to being a Dodger fan, well, he clearly didn't have his heart and soul into that team. So it's just like most basketball fans nowadays. Like, everybody's a fan of a particular player no matter where they go. Like, could you find a Golden State Warrior fan 15 years ago? No. Outside of San Francisco or Oakland? No. Now everybody's wearing Golden State jerseys and hats all over the place. I mean, come on. It's annoying. It really is. Oh, Eric, that's well, good luck, I guess. Well, I mean, you were kind of trolling the 86 team. So I get that's why people loved it and started conversations. But when you're a Mets fan going to Yankee Stadium and they're facing the Astros or the Tigers, you're not going to really, you might get a couple of Yankee fans that say, haha, look at this funny guy talking, having a conversation. I mean, you're going to Fenway where the Mets won a World Series against the Red Sox. I'm going to Yankee Stadium. You're trolling the Red Sox fans. You might have not particularly wore that because of that, but you were in a Mets cap with a strawberry jersey, which was clearly in late 80s jersey. People are going to react to that, especially Red Sox fans. But if you wore the Mets cap with strawberry jersey, Mets in Yankee Stadium when they're facing the Tigers, obviously Strawberry played for the Yankees, so most people might not go crazy, but because you're wearing a Mets hat and a Mets jersey, they'll go after you in a different way. But you see, they weren't disrespecting. No, I don't think you were disrespecting the team, but your point of wearing a Mets and strawberry jersey, a Mets hat with a strawberry jersey at Fenway Park, there's meaning towards that. When you go to, if you wore that same thing to a Yankee Tiger game at Yankee Stadium, Yankee fans would feel disrespected by it because you're wearing a Mets jersey, not because you have a strawberry. I can assure you, if you were wearing a Mets jersey with Mike Piazza or Jacob DeGrom, you might have got a couple of people that's like, hey, DeGrom's the man. But you get most people like, what the hell are you doing? The Red Sox up facing, the Orioles. But because there was a meaning towards it and there's some type of emotional attachment to Strawberry and the Mets with the Red Sox, that's why most people weren't saying you were disrespected. Because you weren't. You were just trying to, go to Fenway Park wearing a strawberry jersey when the Mets won in '86 against the Red Sox. Joey says, I was at a Yankees game a few years back because my friend's father had 12th row seats. See, that's a good seat. That's a pretty good seat. Jakey Bakey, I agree. We can't get swept, but it's looking likely. What's up, Jonathan? How you doing, buddy? See, a real Phillies fan here. Again, Jonathan don't show up when the Mets are beating the Phillies, but I know he's a diehard Phillies fan. What's up, Jonathan? I appreciate you tuning in. Yeah, I'm a Mets, Cowboys, Knicks, and Rangers fan. How about the Rangers? 2 games from the Stanley Cup. Let's go. They played so much better than the Lightning. I love it. JD, me and you got something in common. We got the Cowboys there. What's up, buddy? How you doing? I wouldn't say here come the Phillies. They won 1 game against the Angels that they look dominant, but let's be honest. The Angels are freaking terrible. Like I said, Rob Thompson didn't have to worry about his bullpen. That's probably the reason why the Phillies won anyway. So I'm not worried. But see, this is why I like Jonathan. Again, he don't pop up when the Mets are beating the Phillies. He won't show up in the comments. He only shows up when the Phillies are beating the Mets and showing up now. But I know he's a diehard Philly fan. I know. Hey, Jonathan, let me ask you. You just tuned in. So one of the guys in the comments, JD, says he's a fan of the Dodgers and Mets fans. How do you feel about that? He's a fan of the Dodgers and the Mets. How do you feel about that? I'm curious. Since you are a diehard Philly fan, let's get a whole nother perspective. And they always look like a new team against a team that's terrible. Let's see. Let's see when he has to use their bullpen and see how that goes. Thank you. See? Exactly. Because if you're a fan of the Dodgers and the Mets, considering you're a fan of Dodgers and the Mets, whoever's doing well, you're going to choose that side. Listen, Jonathan here, Philly's team has been terrible this year. He can't deny that. But guess what? Look what he's doing. I was just talking about this. And Jonathan, I'm glad you came on talking about the Phillies, and now you're showing confidence in your Phillies after a dominant performance against the Angels. What did I just talk about? Jonathan he basically proved my point. You can be a diehard when times are bad and times are good. That's a real diehard fan. Jonathan, they won 1 game in dominant performance, looked really well yesterday. He's coming in here saying it's not over. He is talking trash as a Phillies fan. I appreciate that because I know he's a diehard fan. He's subscribed to a Mets channel because, in my opinion, you can say, if you agree or not, Jonathan, I respect the fact that he's a diehard fan. He respects that I'm a diehard Mets fan. Yes, we go at it, and we might not agree all the time, but we respect each other's fandom. That's a big difference. Yeah, when you have to say a primary team, JD, it's hard to believe that you're a diehard Dodger fan, but you like the Mets. That's hard. Yeah, you know what? Again, I think the Phillies' demise is still going to be their defense and their bullpen. I think that's going to still kill them. I don't think a manager change is going to make the Phillies take off. Because they still got the same guys in the bullpen and the same bad defense. Can they turn it around? Well, they got to win a lot of 11-9 games. See, and he said he likes my baseball takes. There you go. So. Well, yeah, definitely the Phillies got a long road bet. They got to jump over the Mets and the Braves, and both teams are got to completely fall apart. Again, that's always possible. It's baseball with 100 games left, but it's hard to think that with the defense and the bullpen of the Phillies, they can do it. All right, guys. So it's past 7:00. This was an interesting, fun, emotional rants. I probably did more rants in this stream over the last hour and a half than I did over the last year so far. So I do appreciate. Oh, Familia sucks. I told you, Jonathan. I told you. So, well, Jonathan, let's see if they can do it though. Again, I think Dombrowski doomed Girardi. So, but again, let's see if them guys, just because they bring those guys up doesn't mean they're going to pitch well. So, but we'll see. So, yes, guys. So, once again, guys, a couple of emotional rants. If you missed my rant based on being a fan of two different teams, go back to that. It was around, I don't know, let's see, probably around the 1 hour mark of the stream. If you want to go check that out and replay it and check that out, I rant for about 10 minutes about being a fan of two different teams. That is the definition of a bandwagon fan. And that all started from JD putting a super chat and calling himself out, basically, not purposely, but put a super chat in saying that he's a fan of the Dodgers and the Mets. That kind of hit a nerve. I don't appreciate that. I respect the baseball knowledge. I appreciate that, but I do not appreciate or respect that type of bandwagon type of fan, because that's what you are. You go with the win. If the Dodgers are doing well, you're going to flock towards the Dodgers. The Mets are doing well, the Mets you'll be flocking to them. But because both teams are good, you're kind of on a path of no man's land. Like, you can't root for any team during this series because it's impossible. So once again, guys, if you want to check out the rant that I had around an hour into the stream, check it out. It was interesting for sure. Once again, guys, don't forget to please hit on that like button before you go. And if you just subscribed to the channel, I do appreciate it. I will be going live tomorrow during the Dodger Game 4 of the series at 4 o'clock. So look out for that and check it out and hit on that like button early. So by the time tomorrow comes at 4 o'clock, we got a lot of people in the stream. Once again, guys, David Peterson versus Walker Buehler. Mets have been struggling the first two games on the West Coast against the Dodgers. Offense has been non-existent. The Mets got to get to the Dodgers early. They got to play a little bit of small ball here, find a way to get on base by any means necessary. Once again, guys, I appreciate you guys hanging out today. As always, Met fans, let's go Mets. Have a good night, guys. See you tomorrow afternoon. Have a good night, guys.